I'd like to introduce Claire from Canada, who takes LDN for multiple sclerosis. Thank you for joining me, Claire.
You're welcome.
Could you tell us when you first started to notice that there was something wrong with you?
I first noticed something wrong with me in 2005. I was stumbling when I walked long distances, and I was getting tingling in my feet.
Mm-hmm.
It was diagnosed as, not fibromyalgia, but plantar fasciitis. And then it disappeared, and it reared up its head again in 2009, and then disappeared again, and then finally in 2011, it stuck. I had the symptoms again, and that time it didn't disappear. I was officially diagnosed with MS January 2013.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and how old were you at that time, Claire?
I was 54 years old.
Okay. It's unusual, isn't it, to have survived that long without getting MS. People usually get it before then. Had you had anything in the past that could have been MS relapses?
No, not that I can recall.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my family doctor thought it was impossible for me to have MS because he said I was too old.
Mm.
So I was actually very healthy. Never had anything that could even in hindsight be connected to MS, and it caught me completely by surprise.
I bet. So at that time, what were your symptoms?
At the time when I was diagnosed, I had numbness in my feet that extended all the way up to my hip, and I had pain in both feet. It was predominantly on my left side, the numbness, and the pain and tingling were in both feet, and that was pretty much consistent.
Mm.
And I had what finally got me in to see the neurologist is I was walking to and from the office one day, and the numbness and tightness extended almost up to my collarbone, and that scared me. I went to the walk-in clinic, and the doctor referred me to a neurologist, and 3 weeks later I was visiting with the neurologist, and the symptoms were still persisting.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically started the whole process towards getting me diagnosed.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get my head around this. Other than the numbness, which is terrible, I know, did you have any problems with your eyesight or your bowels and bladder, fatigue, anything like that?
I have problems with fatigue if I overdo it, and overdoing it at the beginning was heavy, like gardening for 3 hours or house cleaning for a few hours. Now it's about an hour, but if I overdo it, what happens is I get the stumbling and the numbness becomes more noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have occasionally, if I'm really, really tired, bladder issues,
Mm-hmm.
with this urgency, and which, I try not to be tired because that is actually one of the most distressing symptoms that I can get.
Yes.
And but fatigue is the worst one that I deal with on a daily basis.
What about cognitively?
Nothing. Nobody's noticed any differences. I have not noticed differences,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's to deal with the fatigue. Because once I'm tired, my ability to focus becomes kind of going to the door.
Mm-hmm. So how did you hear about LDN?
I was researching because when I was told I probably had MS, and the diagnosis was not confirmed, I started researching MS and found a whole bunch of information about the traditional medical treatments. And I found, actually, luckily, I discovered the Swank diet as well as Dr. Jelinek with his Overcoming Multiple Sclerosis. So I bought Dr. Jelenek's book, and in his book he mentions LDN as having a tremendous amount of promise. So I started researching it, just joined the forum, the online forum, shortly after I was officially diagnosed. Started tracking people's progress and basically just listening in to discussions about the benefits and the side effects. And I thought, this is what I want to try.
Mhm. And how easy was it to get a prescription?
It took me a year and a half.
Oh wow.
My GP refused to prescribe it if my neurologist didn't give it to me.
Mhm.
The first neurologist I had, he basically told me he didn't believe in it, and he refused to prescribe it. I fired him. The second neurologist didn't believe in it, and at that point I had already found another GP, and she was open to it, but she'd heard about it, but hadn't done any more research into it. So I went to the website, downloaded a whole bunch of information. My next appointment with her, I gave her the documentation, and she agreed to prescribe it. She'd actually it was interesting, she'd had 4 patients in the 2 months previous to my first visit with her request a prescription for LDN. And because she didn't know anything about it, she had said no, she was going to do some research. So my timing was perfect. She hadn't even done much research except looking into Naltrexone itself. And then when I showed up with the documentation, she was actually quite pleased. So she wanted me to try a couple other supplements. And so with that, I ended up starting the pregnenolone with her. And then about 6 months later, we started on LDN.
And when you first started, did you have any introductory side effects?
No, I didn't. Actually, I was expecting sleeplessness. I was expecting potentially some side effects. I had no side effects whatsoever. I started in July 2014. I started at 1.5 milligrams. I took it at night, and it was like, wow, I was no side effects. And I wasn't sure if it was just placebo effect. My mind was playing tricks on me or not. But the first night, nothing. The second night, I slept like a baby. The first time I slept through the night for almost a year. So it was very noticeable for me.
What symptoms has LDN helped with? I mean, are you less fatigued? What about that feeling of numbness?
The numbness is almost completely gone, and my fatigue is actually, I would say, not 100% gone, but it's. I'm going to switch phones here. Can you hear me? Okay, my fatigue is, I would say, at about it's about 60% gone, and I'm actually finding that things. It's subtle, but what I want to do, like when I want to do something, I actually have the energy to do it, and I actually get things done again like I used to before. So
that's amazing.
I still have to pace myself, but it's so much better than it was last year at this time.
Before you started, if you had to rate your quality of life on a score of 1 to 10, and 10 being the highest, what would it have been?
I would have probably rated it at 7.
And now?
I would have to give it an 8.5, and I like the trajectory.
Well, that's wonderful. What would you say to other people who are thinking of trying LDN?
I would tell them to try it out. The side effects are so minimal, and to be patient because it's not overnight, and to work with their doctor to figure out a dose that works the best. Like I'm my doctor's first LDN patient, and I meet with her once every 6 weeks, and we talk about side effects, symptoms, dosage. And my last appointment with her last week she was impressed. She said I told her I saw subtle symptoms, subtle changes, and she said that from her perspective, she hadn't seen me since October. She saw a tremendous increase in energy and optimism and just overall health. So she's now an LDN supporter.
Well, that's amazing.
I know, but what I found the most helpful is working with her to discuss dosages, timing. Like if you can find a partner, a healthcare partner who will work with you, I think that's going to be tremendously helpful.
Yes. Oh, all I can say is I really hope that your success continues. For myself, I continued improving for 18 months before I stabilised. So I'm hoping for even bigger and better things to come for you. And maybe you'll give us an update next year.
I hope to. I'm optimistic. I'm at currently at 3 milligrams a day, and I've got a prescription for another 1.5 so that I can, when I feel ready, I can bump it up to 4.5. It's a small it's not for any length of time. It's just an experiment. We'll see how it goes. And like I said to the doctor, I'm willing to drop it down to 3 because I feel good here.
Mm-hmm.
Would I like to see more improvement in my fatigue? Yes. But I would say day by day, I'm noticing, if I was comparing today to yesterday, I don't see much difference. But when I compare this today to 2 months ago, I see improvement. So it's subtle, but it's cumulative.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us.
You're very welcome.
I'd like to introduce Claire from Canada, who takes